Have you ever stopped to think about how one of the biggest, most powerful empires in history could just fall? Well, today we're getting into the wild story of how the Persian Empire, a true superpower of its time, was brought to its knees by one person, a super young Macedonian king named Alexander.
I mean, really think about that. How does a 20-year-old, basically a teenager, take down an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to India? It sounds impossible, right? Well, let's find out how we did it.
All right, so to really get this, we need to know who we're dealing with. It all comes down to two main players: a young, incredibly ambitious king and the gigantic, super rich empire that he decided to take on. So on one side, we have Alexander. He takes the throne at just 20, but don't let his age fool you. This guy had been trained his whole life by the best, including the famous philosopher Aristotle. So he wasn't just a tough warrior, he was a brilliant thinker who knew strategy. He also inherited a seriously powerful and professional army from his dad, and he had one massive goal: unite all of Greece and then conquer Persia.
So let's break down the matchup. You've got Team Alexander, a genius military strategist with a smaller but super well-trained and fast army. Then you've got Team Darius, the king of Persia. He's the ruler of the biggest empire on the planet, with pretty much endless money and a massive army. I mean, this is the ultimate David versus Goliath story, for real.
At first, Darius kind of shrugged off this young kid from Macedon, but Alexander just kept pushing deeper and deeper into his territory. Pretty soon, Darius realized, okay, I have to deal with this myself, and he led his own army out to stop the invasion. And that's where we get our first epic showdown.
The two armies finally met in 333 BC at a place called Issus. Now, the location was everything. Alexander chose this spot, a narrow strip of land stuck between mountains and the sea. This was an absolutely brilliant move because it meant Persia's giant army couldn't spread out and surround him. It was like forcing an elephant to fight in a hallway. Their biggest advantage, their size, was totally useless.
Alexander's plan was so simple, it was insane. He decided he was going to personally lead his best cavalry, that's his soldiers on horseback, and just punch a hole right through the enemy line. And his target? Not just any soldier, but King Darius himself. The thinking was pretty simple. If you take out the leader, the whole army will crumble.
And you know what? It worked. Alexander and his cavalry got so close, charging right at him, that Darius just panicked. He saw this young king coming for him, and he completely lost his nerve. He literally turned his chariot around and fled, leaving his entire army behind.
For Persia, this was a total disaster. Alexander won a massive victory and even captured Darius's family, though to his credit, he treated them with a lot of respect. Later, Darius tried to make a deal. He offered Alexander half of his kingdom if he would just stop. But Alexander said no. He didn't want half. He was there for the whole thing.
Now, you'd think Alexander would have chased Darius down right away, but he was smarter than that. He spent the next couple of years securing all the coastal cities and even Egypt. By 331 BC, he was finally ready. With his back secure, he marched into the heartland of Persia for one last winner-take-all fight.
Yeah, Alexander played the long game. After Issus, he took his time, locking down key areas. He was so successful that when he got to Egypt, they welcomed him as a hero and actually made him their pharaoh. How cool is that? It was only after all that, when he knew his new territories were safe, that he turned to face Darius one last time.
This time, Darius wasn't messing around. He'd gathered an even bigger army, and he brought out a terrifying new weapon: scythed chariots. Okay, so imagine a chariot pulled by horses, but with giant, sharp blades sticking out from the wheels. They were designed to just plow through lines of soldiers and, well, you get the idea. These things were horrifying.
But once again, Alexander had an amazing counterplan. He told his soldiers to do something that sounds crazy. When the chariots came at them, they were just to open up their ranks and create channels. The chariots just flew right through without hitting much of anything. With that threat gone, Alexander saw his chance. Just like before, a small gap opened up near Darius. And, just like before, Alexander formed his cavalry into a wedge and charged straight for the king.
And I'm not kidding, it happened again. For the second time, Darius saw Alexander charging at him, and he bolted. The king of the greatest empire on earth ran away from the battle. And once again, as soon as the soldiers saw their king flee, the entire Persian army just fell apart.
So that was it. That battle, the Battle of Gaugamela, was the final nail in the coffin. With the Persian army totally broken, the empire itself just started to crumble. Alexander was free to march right into its most famous and wealthy cities. And the amount of treasure he found was just mind-blowing. In one city, Susa, his army captured a fortune in gold and silver that had been piling up for centuries. It was so much money he could easily pay his entire army and fund anything else he wanted to do.
Next up was Persepolis, the incredible ceremonial capital of the empire. But after Alexander's army had been there for a few months, the whole place burned to the ground in a massive fire. To this day, nobody is sure exactly what happened. Was it a planned act of revenge for what Persia had done to Greece in the past? Or was it just a wild victory party that got way out of control?
So whatever happened to Darius? Well, while he was on the run, he was betrayed by one of his own governors. This guy, named Bessus, took Darius prisoner. But when Alexander's army got close, Bessus just stabbed the king and left him to die on the side of the road. It was a really tragic and shameful end for a man who once ruled the world.
Alexander's victory wasn't just the end of one empire. It was the beginning of a whole new era for the world. What he did completely reshaped everything that came after.
We call this new period the Hellenistic Age. Hellenic is just a fancy word for Greek, and basically, this was the time when Greek culture, language, and ideas spread all across the Middle East and Asia. But it wasn't a one-way street. These Greek ideas mixed with all the local cultures to create something totally new and amazing. So his legacy is just immense. He built this huge, new empire, sure, but he also connected it. He founded all these new cities, including the famous city of Alexandria in Egypt, which became one of the most important centers of learning in the entire world. And this mix of Greek and Eastern cultures started new trade routes and new ways of thinking that would shape history for hundreds of years to come.
So just think about it. In a little over 10 years, one person completely redrew the map of the world. It's an incredible story of ambition and brilliant strategy. But it also makes you ask, what does a story like this really tell us about power? And what happens when one person's ambition changes the entire world?